And then I'll just turn that one to you.
Oh, yeah, just in case we need to have the map. We have the map on here that, we couldn't pull up on the PowerPoint.
Mike, Deputy Chief, Mike Morrow, isn't it Morrow?
No, it's Steve Morrow
Steve Morrow.
from Proposal Court.
Oh,
Okay, we have 1 minute.
1 minute. There's Jerry. And YouTube's already up. As they always say that they turn it on and it comes on later or something.
Oh, really?
That's what they tell me.
Well, you can watch it live, but if you want to rewatch it, it takes a minute for them to upload it.
Okay, who would want to rewatch it?
Well, I have to sometimes when I'm doing minutes.
Good for you.
That is another job I could never do.
Looks like that camera's looking down.
Okay, I don't know if I fixed that.
I mean, does it look tilted down to y'all?
You just had to bend it back a bit.
Top of your head's kind of
Bend it back a little?
close to chop.
Mm-hmm. There's Candace.
This one?
Yep. There you go.
There.
Bingo. Well, I just saw that. It's probably best because I had my hat on. It was just about right here. I probably should have just left.
Unmute.
Okay, unmute. Oh, we're ready to go? We want to welcome everybody. It's July 12th. It's 6 p.m. We're going to have a discussion about the flood event that we had on July the 6th. After several days of raining, the ground was saturated, and then there was a lot of rain that was up in the Sierra Blanca region. It was a sunny day, 70 plus degrees in the village, and there's no rain, not a drop. But we did have the flood. So we would like to, at this time, thank the Mescalero tribe for letting us have access to their property so that we could assess some of the things that were going on up there. We'd also like to thank some of our other partners, contractors in the community, people like MP Chavez, Tanner Irons, Jack Johnson, High Water Mark, River Bend Engineering, and of course Mosen, Corbin and Associates. Everybody pulled in. Even the county was here. We had all of our departments. Our emergency response was out. I was very appreciative of all the response that we got from our surrounding communities, and it really showed that we have a lot of things working in the right direction. Tonight, you'll hear details of the flood event that occurred last week. You will also receive reports on how the departments comprehensively addressed and responded to each flood event, to the flood event. We'll receive just shortly a debriefing from our emergency manager on just what transpired. So don't want to take up too much of your time. We appreciate you being here. And so we're going to get on with it, and we'll end with the question and answer series. So hopefully we'll address most of your questions and your concerns. And if not, we'll have a question series after that. So at this time, I want to introduce our emergency manager, Joe Kasabowski. And before I do that, Joe, we have a room here filled with our first responders, our village manager.
We're at today, as of today, with repairs on some of the bridges. And where are we at with that, Ron?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Senna, the Deputy Village Manager. In order to be eligible for funding for the disaster, we had to have a resolution, emergency resolution.
Just immediately, and Adam Sanchez started with that for us.
Thanks, Joe. The first, assessing the damages, we showed up on scene. We did notice that Main Road 2 was flooding. One of the main concerns was McDaniels Bridge, which was compromised, the approaches on the north and south side. One of the other things that we come across is Gavilan Canyon. The east side approach was compromised from all the debris. The water had to go somewhere, so it did compromise the approach to that bridge. Main Road 2 was cleaned out. Water was able to flow through the bridge. McDaniel Bridge, like I said, both approaches were compromised. We did have some contractors, MP Chavez, Jack Johnson did help us unload the initial debris on the bridges to get the Main Road 2 open. MP Chavez did go up to McDaniels Bridge and start fixing the approaches to the bridge. And by Friday night at 6 o'clock, McDaniel Bridge was back open. Thursday night at 5 o'clock, Gavilan Canyon was back open by the Village of Ruidoso. We did have some infiltration to the sewer lines. When the water comes up like that, it'll knock off the sewer lids, and debris and water will get in the sewer. We did mitigate that in a timely manner. My guys, all the village staff actually walked the river and assessed all the manholes and sewer lines, anything crossing, to make sure there's nothing compromised in the situation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adam. Next, we looked at mitigating the flooding at the treatment plant, and Isaac and his crew and some other people helped him out with that. Isaac, do you have any updates for us on that?
Well, so that day,
Microphone.
whenever it rains in town, it takes approximately about 1 hour to hit the plant. So when Adam called me, unfortunately, everybody had already left for the day, but I figured I could handle it myself. And at about 4:40 is when the flows picked up instantaneously, and with all kinds of debris, a lot of pine needles, a lot of bark, and I did flood my influent lift station, which is where the bar screen is and my fine screens, but I was able to keep it contained in a concrete berm that I have, so I didn't have an illegal discharge whatsoever, and it lasted for about 30 good minutes of solid high flow. But we did get 5 hours of sand and silt that entered the facility. Unfortunately, my equalization basins were pretty full from the weekend before, from the holiday. So I had to, unfortunately, put a lot of it to the plant. I did put what I could to the equalization basin. So what we'll see is what it did if it settles out in the process basins, and we were able to not burn up any pumps with rocks and silt and sand. So we were able to get by that. We're gonna see within the next week. I'm sampling this week for phosphorus and nitrogen, and we'll see if we pass that this week.
Okay.
But everything's running smooth. It did jack our concentration from 1,500 to 21,000, which is very high. So we're trying to waste that out as we speak, every day. But other than that, we were running good.
Okay, that's the bottom line, that the plant's in good shape.
Yes, sir.
We didn't have any illegal discharges.
No.
And I know you got a lot of work ahead of you, you and your staff, but we're in good shape.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mayor, there was, because of the surcharging of the manholes, there was some discharge. Isaac did go out and take samples. Can you talk about that, Isaac?
Yes, sir. I did take E. coli samples starting on the 7th of July, which were too numerous to count on the next day. So I took samples 7th, 8th, and 9th that did not meet the river standards. So I took one on Saturday as well, and it finally got back to normal. So we passed as far as the river standards are concerned. So it's safe once again.
Okay, so that was from the flood going into the river and then overloading the sewer system, and then it was discharging back into the river?
Correct.
Yes, sir. And it dropped considerably on that Saturday sample.
Okay, thank you.
Is Eric available today? You got it? Okay. So the next is assessing the water and sewer infrastructure throughout town. Adam Sanchez.
Like Isaac explained just a second ago, we did have some surcharging in the sewer. We did have an illegal discharge just because of the flows in the water, the flows into the sewer system and some of the debris that did to get in the sewer system. The sewer crews, did work fast and get it mitigated. High water mark has sent all the documents to NMED and we've got with our PIO and sent it out to the public as far as our discharge. Like I said before, we have been going throughout town. We have a checklist. Multiple departments have actually been going through and looking at not just broken lines or infrastructure, but, something that, could be in the future, a hazard in the future, broken or something like that. So we have a checklist of everything that we're going through town and we'll look into any kind of, bank stabilization or anything like that around our lines.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Next on the list is helping homeowners gain egress and ingress. Since the bridges were washed out, we had some easements and stuff we worked on. Ron, can you cover that for me?
Zach Cook, our village attorney, prepared a temporary easement agreement due to the McDaniels Bridge being was out. So we were very fortunate to contact some of the homeowners on the other side of the properties, and we were able to execute one easement agreement, a temporary easement agreement that allowed homeowners to be able to get to their homes that were stranded. So we're very fortunate, very thankful that we were able to reach this agreement with the homeowner.
Thank you, Ron. So next on the list is we had to get contact information for the homeowners up and down the Upper Canyon area, and Chief Thetford, you took care of that for us?
Yes, sir. Cody Thetford, Fire Chief for the village.
Microphone.
Sorry about that. Cody Thetford, Fire Chief for the Village of Ruidoso. To start with the information, just to set this up a little bit, when the call came in around 2:20, Station 3 was paged for possible flooding at the second bridge with a power pole and a line down in the water. Station 3 and all stations responded to that area. And as the mayor and the manager said, there was no weather in town. We didn't even see a raindrop or any water until we got past Station 3 into the Upper Canyon. At that time, the water had risen and crossed the second bridge. Station 3 and Engine 13 with 2 personnel had got across that bridge before the water had risen over. So they potentially were stuck over there until the water receded. But we had hit an all call due to the amount of water and the flooding at the time with the debris coming down. Our main focus was life safety. Police department and utility and everybody responded within about 15 to 20 minutes to that affected area, and working both sides of the river to contact homeowners. Contacted Chief Chavez and our emergency manager to hit a PSA, if you will, a reverse 911 to alert the residents in that affected area so that they wouldn't try to leave or drive out or try to walk around any of those areas that were affected by the bridge and the roads of the water rising. For one, it was still raining and we didn't know what else was coming down behind it as far as debris. Long story short, there were several rescues all the way down through town. When I say rescues, there was people on porches or walking out from Grindstone and Fern and Sleepy Hollow. But fortunately, between all the village departments working together so quickly, there was no injury. There were really no issues to speak of that weren't mitigated within that first hour and a half. And so at that time, when the water started to recede, we pretty much just posted in the areas that were affected and stayed there until we felt it was safe enough to open any roads or help any individuals across any properties or roads and take care of any needs at that time. And then after that, as far as contacting homeowners, the fire department, police department, street, there were several individuals. We got out, we knocked on every door. We worked with the PIO to come up with a form that would get pertinent information names, phone numbers, addresses, needs, resources to everyone that was home. And then after that, we followed up and worked with Moles and Corbin on their Atlas program, if you will, Eric Boyda, water utility, to get other contacts and phone numbers to let the second homeowners and anyone that was not home that we couldn't get a hold of, that the village was letting them know that they could have damage or possible damage, and wanted them to know about the event in Ruidoso, and then give them the phone numbers and names of the resources here that we could assist them till they got here, or take care of it if they weren't able to come. That way, we didn't have traffic and other life safety issues at that time. And I don't know the exact number, Yvonne, I don't know if you have that number, but I know between the reverse 911 and the phone calls, we had reached and contacted over 400 residents and individuals at that time. And there were, needs as far as going in. We checked every morning, every 24 hours. There were only few that needed transportation, medicines, things like that. And then with the fire department, police department going in, we did gain access on the easement, and we cut and cleaned a few things out of the road there. And we were able to gain access and use it as an emergency fire use, took things in, brought people out. So overall, with all the staff and the emergency that happened, no injury during the event, and then after the event, taking care of our citizens and our guests, I feel like went as well as possible, and the team came together and did a great job.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
The next thing we're looking at is we activated the Emergency Operations Center at the fire station, and I took care of that. So we called in the support staff from other departments to help answer phones. One of the issues that we did have was that the phone system through Windstream, we were having some issues with dropping calls and not getting calls at all throughout most of the process all the way through Friday. We would get reports throughout the day from the directors that are out in the field. We made sure we watched the weather, and then we had the individuals assisting me at the EOC make phone calls, like Chief Thetford said, to homeowners and second homeowners to make sure that they were aware of the situation. Next, we have our PIO, Carrie Gladden, covering misinformation and messages that we took care of.
Thanks, Joe. As soon as the all-call went out and we got wind of the flood event that was happening, we immediately started the public information campaign, using all of our social media tools along with the village website. And so over the next few hours, we on the initial day of the flood, we put out 9 updates that afternoon and evening, just letting people know about bridge information, shelter information, the status of the flood, the waters, and just giving people information about what was happening right at the moment, and trying to get videos and images out. And then over the next couple of days, we ramped those down a little bit, but continued to give as much information as we could. We fielded a lot of calls because additionally, the phone lines were out. And so we do tend to get a lot of calls because our number is posted on the website. And just as a reminder, just want to remind people that, whenever there is an event like this, how you find out information, the best way to follow information is on the village Facebook page, the village website, which is ridosonm.gov. And we constantly try to put information up on both of those sites and social media constantly. And then, of course, the radio station, we filter all of that information to the radio station as well. So that is what we had going during all of this.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. The next, we discuss the work done in the river with the Army Corps of Engineer, and Manager Dodge will cover that.
Joe, thank you. Good evening, Village of Ruidoso, Mayor Council that's listening. I want to report that Eric Boyda, our Water Resource Director, is out today, but I'm covering his section. This is the environmental impact part of the emergency response. Immediately, Mr. Boyda was in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers, making sure that we had all the permits necessary to work within the river. We tracked over 80 truckloads of material that was actually pulled out of the bridges in the impacted area. The stockpiled material that you see out on Grindstone and Resort came from those areas. And, you know, at this time, we're going to be leaving that there just as evidence of what occurred. And then we will be mobilizing to mulch down that material and get it removed, cleaned up, if you will. In working with our 404 permits, there's immediate response and documentation that needs to occur. Eric entered into an agreement immediately with High Watermark to help us. High Watermark is our engineering consultant, and Phoebe's here representing them today. We also were able to gain access to the reservation and the upper watershed to assess the environmental conditions. Later on, Phoebe will be talking about those environmental conditions that existed that led to the heavy debris and runoff that occurred in the area. We have stayed in compliance and contact with any of the environmental agencies that required notification. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Dodge. Next, we had some concerns with access to the fields for a tournament over the weekend. It looks like Rodney stated that the tournaments were canceled that weekend, so there's no additional on that. And we need to look at the increased demand on the water system. Adam will take care of that.
Thanks, Joe. As of Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday, there was no increase in demand to the water system as far as leakage into the river or any kind of broken pipe, if of any crossing to the river. And we did monitor that through the weekend, and the only increased demand we had was actual usage.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Next is tracking the flood project, Flood 2021. And Karen, are you going to cover that? Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Karen Gutierrez. I'm the Capital Projects Manager. And once we had been made informed of the emergency, Finance Department did set up a project number for our directors and our staff to utilize so we can keep track of all the expenses that did occur and will occur. We also implemented measures for the emergency procurements that may happen now, that happened at the time and may happen here in the short future. So at this time, Finance has put everything in place for our staff to be able to work and do what they need to do to mitigate all these issues from the flood.
Thank you, Karen.
Mayor Karen, Phoebe, can you cover the various thresholds? We have identified that we have met the state threshold. Can you give an explanation on that, Phoebe?
Yes, thank you, Village Manager. This is Phoebe Sweeney. So in contacting the state, we reached out to the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management at the state. The current threshold for a state disaster assistance program is around $77,000. And at this point of time, based on the records that Finance has kept, we have met that threshold. For FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency threshold for the state, it is a threshold of $3 to $4 million. So as we know, other counties and other towns and municipalities and tribes in the area are also seeing some flood damage. So as the state and FEMA work together to assess what's gone on here in the last few weeks, we'll that will be the determination of whether the state as a whole meets that threshold of $3 to $4 million. But as of right now, we know we've met the state threshold for a county for that disaster assistance program. So Joe and myself and the village will be working with the state at a minimum for a state disaster assistance program support and funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Next was the evacuation centers. So I contacted the Red Cross immediately on knowing that we were going to have people stranded either side of the bridge and maybe doing some evacuations. I got Mr. Robert Barber, he's one of the volunteers that sets up the Red Cross shelter. We opened up the community center by the swimming pool as a shelter, and we actually did not have anybody show up at the shelter either day for the whole flood event, which was kind of surprising to us, even though we knew we had people that would be stuck on either side of the bridge. And also, the Red Cross was set up to assist anybody that had damages to their homes, and nobody came forward saying that they had damage that met the requirements for their homes either at that point in time. So we set them up Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and didn't use them Friday because we didn't have anybody to respond as of Thursday evening. Next, we're going to look at the alarm system. Chief Thetford.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so as far as the notification system, we did use part of the system. As everyone knows, we run a system check on the 1st and 15th at 5 o'clock. We did not hit the sirens during this emergency. We did use the alert sense and the reverse 911, but we're going to use this to update and take recommendations and put something together for the council and come back to the mayor, the council, and the manager for a policy update and recommendations to that notification system. But it is up and running. It did work exactly as it was planned, and we just want to make sure that we keep that in place for our citizens in our community for any future events.
Thank you, Chief. And like the Chief Thetford said, we did activate the emergency notification system, and I went from the Mescalero reservation line all the way to the Downs, and we notified approximately 400 people, if not a few more, through that system. Okay, second is the sandbag sites. Chief Thetford.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Joe. So we do have, we had had a material, shovels and bags at Fire Station 1, worked with PIO in the village to make sure that we got that information out where people that needed bags or assistance with any of the flooding, that they could come to Station 1. And then Ira Pearson and Kenmore with the county set up a second site at Copper Ridge. I know at our site since Tuesday, we've helped distribute somewhere around 500 to 600 bags in the village. So that's been a success. I don't know at this time if Copper Ridge had much action, but it sounded like they had very minimal people out there, which hopefully they didn't have too much flooding on that side, or we were able to take care of them at Station 1. So it worked out.
Thank you, Chief. And we got you and Samantha Mendez next up on the GPS system.
Thank you, Joe. One of the issues we came across were properly mapping out the easement that the fire department created for ingress and egress during the event. We were able to find an application on our phones called Onyx to help us identify properties along with current owners and map this using coordinates. And so that'll be a feature that we'll use moving forward on all emergency events that need to be mapped out.
Thank you, Samantha. Next, we have letters of recognition from the mayor, Yvonne, and the director is going to be the responsible party, Mr. Dodge.
Joe, as we move forward, this one of the practices that we've employed is always making sure that we recognize the various partners that we have in this. So we're going to be making recommendations on recognitions for individuals that have gone above and beyond in assisting the village of Ruidoso and or citizens in this event. We're currently compiling a list of all contractors that have worked with us and anybody that's assisted in any manner. We will be making that recommendation to you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dodge. And the next thing is the follow-up. It has Manager Dodge listed on there. Mr. Dodge.
Mayor, Council, Village of Ruidoso, one of the things that we're wanting to make sure that we do is do briefings like this at the end of every day as the Village of Ruidoso is working in emergency management mode. We do sit down, we do a debriefing similar to what we're doing today. We go through every department and explain what's been conducted to either mitigate or inform people or work on the issues. We're going to continue to assess the infrastructure, and we're moving into a recovery mode. In this next phase of the presentation, we're going to be calling on the Capital Projects Department to explain the critical infrastructure that we've been addressing since 2008, where we've gone with that, and where we intend to go.
Thank you, Manager Dodd. Would you like to hear anything from Chief Chavez? We hadn't heard from him tonight, or?
Sure. If we can have Chief Chavez, if you could talk about traffic control and things that your department did proactively. And you also put out some PIO information as well. So, Chief.
So whenever we got the initial dispatch, we had some units respond to the second bridge. That was the area that was being reported with the heaviest water flow. We had 4 units or 4 personnel get on the other side, and they were actually confined to everything in the upper canyon along with the fire department for probably about 3 or 4 hours. But they did do some evacuations. We had numerous people down here on Gavilan evacuating the river RV park right there, right at the bridge. There was heavy flooding in that area also. So we were spread out, taking care of all the bridges. We had the Downs helped us out with monitoring the bridges there in Country Club and Eagle. Once that was happening, we just had a lot of turning around, a lot of people that just wanted to go up there and see what was happening. They didn't have really any business up in that area, but that was a lot of where our resources were spent, telling people to turn around if they didn't need to go up in the Upper Canyon. We worked with Carrie quite a bit with getting information out, and with Carrie and Kelly to get photos and those types of things. The one issue that we did have that we have to work on collectively is our phone system. I mean, it's been brought up today that the phone systems kept going down. We had service in and out, but that's something that we'll address sooner than later so that we have it corrected. But outside of that, I just want to thank every member, every department of the village. Everybody worked together, and it was a success because of every department, not just one department.
Thank you, Chief Chavez. And I'd like to mention, I don't know if you did, but we also had the state police come in and assist as well. They did show up and assist as well. So next, I'd like to introduce Karen Gutierrez and Phoebe for the after action plan.
Yes, thank you, Joe. As Manager Dodge expressed, we're currently engaging with putting together an assessment strategy. With this strategy, it's going to involve not only the engineers and a lot of what high water mark provides for the village. We're going to be identifying and documenting all the areas that were affected by this flood event for not only internal use, but for any possible funding use down the road. So with that, Phoebe is here to give us a brief overview on where we came from in the first disaster, which we call Disaster 1783, through today, which we have not been issued a disaster number yet. Phoebe?
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, would you mind putting up that presentation? So just to illustrate some of the complexities and the background on how we got here, with the previous flooding associated in 2008, associated with Hurricane Dolly. If you can go to the next slide. The hurricane in 2008 provided, a lot of rain for Ruidoso and the area here. The remaining projects as a result of that major disaster, and that disaster was declared as a federal disaster under the number 1783. So for those that have been in Ruidoso for many years, everybody's familiar with 1783. Currently, under 1783, we still have some major infrastructure projects that are ongoing that we're trying to move forward. And that is the sewer line project, which runs the main interceptor line down the middle of the river. And as part of that sewer line project, there's actually 3 phases. Those 3 phases are the restoration phase, which is actually ongoing. All the relining has been done, all the manhole rehab has been done, all and the top hats have been fully implemented as well. All that's remaining underneath that phase is 2-point repairs. That's along Fern Trail, and they're actually realignments, I should say. They're 2 realignments. One is along Fern Trail, and one is between Country Club and River Trail. And as soon as those are complete, then that first phase will be totally complete. The next phase is the lift station phase. That has already gone out to bid, and there's a contractor selected. That's Smithco Construction, and they're in their ramp-up period, their first 90-day ramp-up period. So here in the next few months, they will actually start constructing 2 lift stations, one at Sleepy Hollow and one at near the on the Stinson property near what we call that little roundabout before you go into Upper Canyon. We call it the Circle Lift Station. And then the third phase is a hazard mitigation phase. And the hazard mitigation phase is a project to help mitigate potential future damage along the sewer line. Unfortunately, FEMA did not allow us to move the sewer line away from the river, like onto Main Road 2 for a number of reasons. Also logistically and physically, it was a huge task. I think it would have been probably 3 times what we were funded in order to do that. But for the hazard mitigation phase right now, because the sewer line is still around the river, running across or parallel to the river in about 40 locations, this phase is to provide armament or dropping the sewer line down in elevation to protect it from future flooding. As we saw in this event, we did see some damage to manholes, and so this phase will hopefully mitigate that in the future. We are still looking at the damages and the realignment that may have happened of the river itself in relation to these 40 locations. That Moles and Corbin is the engineer, and they have a fully engineered design. So I want to be perfectly transparent that we may need to look at how the river has evolved or moved side to side or vertically, because we have a lot of erosion on the river from this particular flood event.
Phoebe, if we made, Jerry, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the approach of the design. And, I know that your team is going to be down here in the next couple of days to assess the damage. But as we were discussing earlier, your bid and your approach design is going to be to do some field engineering. So can you explain that, Jerry?
Yes, so my name is Jerry Paz. I'm with Moles and Corbin and Associates. And the way we designed this hazard mitigation project is we understood that it was a living river, that it was shifting courses with every rainstorm that came down. And so we incorporated into our contract documents provisions for the contractor to provide us cross sections of the river, and we would compare that to our design topography and make sure that the design that we have is still germane. And so that is part of our contract in the mitigation project. So we will do some field changes, adjustments as it becomes applicable, knowing that the survey we did last year is going to be different than what it is now. So if this week we're going to do an assessment of those 40 structures to determine if they have eroded beyond the limits of what we anticipated in our design. Our design was flexible enough to be adjusted in the field, but if the erosion has occurred beyond that limit, we might have to do some redesign work. And so if of the 40 structures, there may be a handful of those that we have to look at again. But our goal is to kind of get it out to bid and then make those field adjustments. The village has approved us with time and resources to make those field adjustments. And so that has been our plan all along. And if the damage was within the range that we anticipate could have happened, then we can just proceed forward with the design that we have. But I do anticipate there's going to be a handful of ones that we're going to have to change.
And Mayor and Council, Village Ruidoso, as soon as we get that assessment complete, and from my perspective, that's one of the biggest threats that we have with this storm event is, over $2 million worth of design work in a couple of years that's gone into that design work. So after visiting with Jerry and Phoebe today, I feel a little bit more comfortable that work is not washed downstream with the river. So, maybe some areas that we do need to make some adjustments, but, I think that was our biggest risk at this time.
Thank you, Village Manager. So with that, the other remaining large infrastructure projects that were outstanding as of a few years ago under FEMA Disaster 1783 were the bridges, or are the bridges. One was the Close Road Bridge. We are actually, the construction is complete on that. That's one that we just recently finished, and it looks like Close Road held up pretty well from our initial assessment. The other bridge was Eagle Road Bridge. Again, construction was complete a couple of years ago. That looks to have been held up pretty well in this flood event. So the remaining ones that we are still having to look at and repair as a result of Hurricane Dolly are McDaniel, North Loop, Main Road 2 Bridge, Sleepy Hollow, River Trail, and Robin Road. And so the other thing is to share with everybody is actually just last month, we finally got that fully obligated, and the council did approve the signing of those subgrant agreement amendments for the funding of those remaining bridges to increase the funding so that we can actually, the village can actually go out to engineering and do the construction on those bridges.
Okay, so Phoebe, just touch on what you mean by obligated, just so it's perfectly clear.
Absolutely, Mayor. So by obligated, what I mean by that is the funding that is necessary to actually adequately go out for engineering and start the construction of the bridge was provided to, obligated in a grant agreement so that the village can know that that funding is secured.
And so I know one of the questions that we're asked all the time is, just now, it's been 13 years. So what have you been doing? What have we been doing for 13 years, just in a nutshell?
Thank you so much for that question, Mayor. And if you can go to the next slide. So as an overview, I provided a flow chart for the public and to also talk about. So I know it's kind of small, but really, there are so many steps in the process in order to get a FEMA, we have the disaster, and then to get the project obligated and to get it completed. And these bridges are actually very complicated in that there was an initial how the bridge was prior to the disaster. And actually, at the time, codes and specifications have improved. So what we had to do was get that approved so that we can build the bridges and design the bridges to the current codes so that the bridges can be safe for the public and also be funded. So that was one of the key hooks on trying to get that funded. Because initially, the funding was only about $100,000 for replacement, and that just wasn't enough. So fiscally, in order to move forward, all that onus would have been on the village to take on that debt in order to repay. And there was, with these bridges being millions of dollars, to actually replace it to current codes and specs. That's why it took that extra time to do that.
Because the initial assessment was 100 to 150,000 per bridge. After we got started, we found out new codes, pricing, engineering, multiple engineers, different departments, approvals. They were $1 million to $2 million each. And so if we had started those, that would have been out of the village's bank account. which we all, and anybody in a business, or if you just do your checkbook at home, you understand cash flow. So we couldn't get started until we were able to fully fund. And so it's been worked diligent by you, other engineering companies that we've engaged with, multiple mayors and councils that have stayed after this to get to this point. Do you think that's in danger, any of that with this last event, or do you think it'll move forward?
I believe in my discussions with FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security, I believe it will move forward. We still have the need to replace the bridges. And so again, we have not implemented the final permanent and agreed upon scope of work. So now we still have that scope of work to do. Based upon what I've seen in an initial assessment, the same kind of scope of work is needed. So there is no change really in the scope of work. The bridges still have to be designed to current codes and specifications for roads anyway. So we can move forward with the current scope.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so as we move forward, I just want to also, if you could go to the next slide, to answer and address the question of what has the village been doing. I know this is really detailed, but there has been from the very start of the disaster, so many milestones that the village staff, previously even before our team was engaged, before Moles and Corbin, before the new village leadership was here and installed. There were so many milestones in the process of getting the sewer line obligated, getting the bridges obligated, getting the sewer line started, and getting the bridges started, and with 2 of the bridges constructed. So I know the question has always been asked, what have we been doing? The answer, short-term answer or quick answer is a lot. And I think all these bullet points that you see on the screen today demonstrate that. So thank you. Thank you so much. And so as we move forward, we will, now that we have a good pathway forward with the leadership of the mayor, village manager Dodge, and Joe, we have a good start for how do we capture these costs right now? How do we do the assessment and create that documentation so that we can ensure that the village of Ruidoso can get support through disaster assistance programs, either at the state level and or at the federal level, so that it'll be a lot more efficient, knock on wood. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Village Manager.
Thank you, Phoebe and Karen. That is all that was on my part of the debriefing. Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Well, at this time, hopefully that your questions were answered. I know some of them out there still have questions. But basically, we're still moving forward on replacing the bridges. It looks like that we'll be able to continue. There has been a tremendous amount of work done. I'll let you know, these guys up here, they're not used to being talking and answering questions on microphones. They're a lot better in the field. These guys do their job excellent. We have a wonderful team, all the way from our in-house folks that work for us daily to our partners that we contract with. But I'm really proud of everybody and what we've been able to accomplish. A lot of communities in the state were calling for help from the state, for National Guard to be helped in different areas and floodings and whatnot. We were able to handle all that in-house. Chief Thetford, your folks did a wonderful job along with the police department. And then our utility, anybody in a Village of Ruidoso uniform was out there knocking on doors, helping people across the river, telling them to shelter in place. I know people went golfing that day. They were having birthday parties that they had no idea this was happening. And the next thing they know, the water is lapping up on their decks. And so you guys, I know there was no loss of life. There was no one that I know of was injured. We had people on oxygen. Thank goodness for P&M. They performed a lot better than our phone company. No one lost electricity, so everybody was safe. I know there were a lot of concerns, a lot of maybe blood pressure went up, but you guys did an excellent job. And I want to thank our village manager that went into action. This isn't our first emergency. Some of us that's been on this council for quite a while have learned to operate with emergencies, and we've gotten better at every one of them. We learned from every event, no matter how small or how large. But our village manager really enacted the team, got everybody on point, and really made things happen. So it could have been a lot worse. But personal thanks to all the team that we have here and all the folks that are not here that work for the village. I'm just real proud of all of you. So at this time, Vaughn, do you see anybody with their hand up? Anybody with questions? I know we're not that good, but we do have answers if you have any questions.
Mayor, I may, as people, maybe contemplate writing a message, and if they don't want to write a message, they can always feel free to call any of us at any given time. We do continue to monitor the hotlines that we have set up, and we'll respond that same day.
Okay. And I did get a text, what is PIO? That's PIO, that's Public Information Officer. We learned early on years ago with Hurricane Dolly, and then we had a freeze, and then we had a fire, the Little Bear Fire, that they don't call it rumor doso for nothing. And being the mayor of rumor doso, I'm trying to shut that down. So we have enacted a policy that, everything comes out through one channel, and that's our Public Information Officer that will go out to social media. Then we have the radio station 1490 AM that we put on loops every 20 minutes. And so we get that information to you as soon as possible. We're going to work on the emergency response to maybe enact those sirens so that people know that something's up. Those are things that we hadn't really thought about, but due to public input, phone calls, texts, emails, I'm still reading the emails, that we got that information from you, and we do listen to the public for sure. So
Looks like we have a couple of comments.
I got a couple of comments. I can't read them from here, but can you read them off?
You have a question from Mary. What is going to be done for the erosion on the unpaved roads?
Well, do you want to talk about that, utility director? We obviously don't have a in-concrete plan, as it were, but go ahead, Adam.
So the unpaved roads, if you do have an issue, feel free to call in and let us know which roads, that you are talking about. We do have street department staff going around trying to fix the scour on the unpaved roads. So like I said, if you do see it, let us know and we'll get to it as soon as possible.
Adam, I think specifically they may be talking about Fox Drive.
Oh, Fox Drive?
She just messaged again and she said off Alpine Village Road.
Is that in the county?
That sounds like it's in the county.
If it's in the village, we address those. If not, we'll be happy to pass that message along to Ira Pearson, the county manager, but we'll just need to know if you're in the village limits. So there's a plan. We're working on that, and believe me, I know that we have other paving issues that weren't caused by this event. We have such a short paving season around here with the temperatures that we're doing a lot as much as we can at this time. So another question? Nada? Well, for those of you that have been calling about the village cleaning up your yards in Upper Canyon, down around Gavilan, right off the river, we're taking the big material. So if you can, we'll have to have an agreement where we can access to your property. We will remove the big trees and things like that are there. But the rest of it is your property. And so you'll have to get the debris, the slash, anything that you can to the road. And then our solid waste department will pick it up. And they do a really good job on that. So we're doing everything that we can to help. Now, there are some properties that were really impacted. And to be honest, if it wasn't for that McDaniel Bridge, there had been a lot more damage to homes. And I can tell you, Red Cross may not have got a phone call, but there's a lot of insurance companies that are getting phone calls. And we do realize that some didn't have flood insurance. And so maybe there are means that we can introduce you to hopefully get you some relief. But if you have a lot of big debris in your yard, and there is a lot, feel free to contact the village. We have crews over there working daily to remove that stuff, but we've given direction not to access property until we have an agreement. And, it's just a simple assessment, easement, so that gives us access to your property. Anybody? Nothing? And if you can't think of a question, and like the manager said, if you don't want to type it up now, our phone numbers are listed. Mine's on Facebook more than it should be. It's on the website. And I'm happy to take your phone call. If I don't answer your phone, leave a message. But in reality, call the village because they'll direct you to the right department. You know, and that's all I'll do, is I'll call that department. We have very capable people that take care of that. So if that's all, I guess we're not going to take up any more of your Monday evening. We thank you for tuning in. And again, the village is here for you. So call us with your needs, concerns, and we'll address them as quickly as we can. So have a good night. God bless you. And we had another beautiful, it was cloudy and 70 today, but it was beautiful. So we're looking forward to some more rain, just not as much at one time, but the next forecasts are for rain. So be safe, everyone.